Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. My guest today is an author, a blogger, a former horse trainer, a stand-up comic, a small business owner, and by her own admission, a provocative menopausal baseball enthusiast. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll find out. Her current novel, The Aliquot Sun, is available on Amazon.com and is in the early stages of being adapted for a movie. We'll find out about that as well. Cindy Falteich, welcome to 30 Minutes.
Thank you, Rick.
Delighted to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
Cindy and I met at a press club luncheon, I guess about a month and a half or so ago. Mm-hmm. Copies of her book, The Aliquot Sun, were at the registration desk. And while I was paging through it, this affable, personable, bubbly person came up to me because she was selling chances and introduced herself. I didn't win the raffle. I did buy a few chances, but I did luck out in being able to invite her, and she was interested and available to come visit with us today to talk about her book, her life, and her aspirations. Cindy, from everything I've heard about you and what I've read and the material you sent me, I think it's fair to say you're a quirky person. And I mean that in the best of ways.
I won't take that personally.
You've got a quirky background. You've got a quirky sense of humor from some of the stuff I've read. Have people generally described you as quirky or words to that effect?
You know, I always say I strive to be different, but I've been called much worse. And matter of fact, it was probably 10 years ago. I was, my life was just chaos. It was just sheer chaos. And I was sitting in this therapist's office, and I'm pouring out to her, trying to paint this picture of this complicated fabric of my life. And I'm just pouring out my soul, and she stopped me right in the middle of it, and she looked at me and she said, "You're crazy." I was like, oh my gosh, this is coming from a therapist. So I thought, well, you know what? Maybe it's time to start embracing that. Maybe I'm not normal. Maybe the things that go through my head are just a little different.
No, everybody else is crazy. You're the one who's normal.
Who knows, right?
You're the new normal.
So that was a huge wake-up call for me. And
did you have to pay for that session?
I actually did pay for that session.
You did?
Yes.
You should have gotten your money back.
Well, you know, actually, that was probably the best piece of advice I've ever gotten.
You've written 5 novels?
5 novels.
This is the first one published, however. Is that correct?
This is the first one published, and we self-published this.
And
what happened was I was writing along, right?
Yeah.
I sold my business, which is probably why the therapist thought I was crazy. Sold my business, had a little stipend, and decided I was going to, I think you lost your microphone.
I did.
Oops. I guess we're going to take a break.
Keep going.
So I sold my business, right? And had a little stipend, and then and I just decided I was going to write. And that was crazy. So I just started writing, and I got to tell you, the material came, characters came, everything was going really well. I mean, I'd written, as part of my business, there was a lot of communication that happened. So it wasn't like I couldn't write. Yes. It wasn't like I couldn't keep ideas flowing or bring them together or any of this other stuff. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, so I wrote one novel. Then I wrote a sequel, wrote another one, wrote another one.
That quickly?
Wrote another one. Probably over the course of like 5 years.
All right.
And I was working with this editor at the time, and she finally sat me down and read like my last work, and she's like, "Cindy, what are you going to do with these?" I said, you know, I hadn't really thought of that. So we came up with a strategy. The strategy was we were going to take, like, we kind of prioritized, like, what was my best work and what was possibly not my best work. And we prioritized them, and then we just took the sum, just kind of middle of the road, and we just decided, throw it out there. It's like the sacrificial lamb. Right. Because you know what happens. You throw it out there, and somebody gets a hold of it, they want to change it, right? So she was like, somebody's going to change it anyway, so let's not do anything with it and just see where it goes. And so we did. We threw it out there. I'm not really good at marketing, so with very little promotion.
You're not good at marketing?
Oh, my gosh.
I doubt that.
Go
on.
Anyway, so I just like query letters to agents and stuff.
Yeah.
I just found that like so boring. I'm like, I just don't have the bandwidth to query, right? So that's where I was. Next thing I know, this guy on LinkedIn reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I see that you're a local writer, and I want to make a major motion picture, but I've had a really hard time trying to find like a story that I want to base this on. Give it your best shot." So we talked, we went back and forth, a couple of projects, and he's making The Aliquot Sun. So it'll be a movie.
And he has the money to do that, or he has to go
No,
out and
we're
raise
going
the
to
money?
raise that. So everything's based on, basically everything is raised on the
Yeah.
script, because we know how quality the script has to be.
Okay.
So that's where we are now.
Who is Charlotte Smith? What's the storyline? And why do you describe it as a new adult, the new adult genre?
The new adult genre is actually a new genre, and it's made to bridge the gap between YA novels,
Right.
young adult novels, and basically romance novels.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think what they did is, because you'd have YA and then you'd have romance, but then you have erotica, right? So, but then they wanted to kind of take, but sometimes eroticas they're really great books, like they have a plot and a story,
Yeah.
and they're awesome. So it's kind of one of those genres that appeals to the college age kids,
Right.
which of course are the people that you want to rope them into your fan base now, because then you have this fan base that grows and grows, right? Plus those are the kids that are great with social media. If they like something,
Yes.
it's going to go viral. So they're really your marketing people. Like the millennium generation is really the people you should be targeting right now. And so I think the new adult genre was basically developed to capture what would interest them.
Okay. So who's Charlotte Smith?
Charlotte Smith is my protagonist.
Yeah.
She's 17 years old, and she's getting to the point where she's very tired of her controlling parents. They're very rich. They run her life. They don't let her do anything outside of their very specific plan for her. And so one day she's tired of it, and she decides to spite them by staging her disappearance, and she ends up the reluctant guest of 4 bull riders on their way to a professional event.
Bull riders.
Bull riders.
Yes.
Professional bull riders. What I wanted to do was I wanted to take this very privileged young woman
Yes.
who had a very staunch opinion of her parents right now, and I wanted to cast her into something quite unlike any life that she'd ever lived. So she thinks she has it bad, but then she gets in with these 4 guys and she sees how bad things can get.
Another world. Is
Yeah.
there anything autobiographical about this novel?
You know, it is a little bit of it is, because it took me a long time to figure out who I was.
Have you reached that destination?
I'm getting pretty close.
you?
I'm getting, at least I have an awareness of what feels like Cindy and what doesn't feel like Cindy. And Charlotte's that way. Like she's been sold this bill of goods her whole life about who she is. And she honestly, she doesn't feel like she belongs in the family. And of course, the irony is in the end of the book, you find out why she has those feelings. And it's also a book that kind of takes you, because I believe if you build your awareness of who you are in this world and you have a very good understanding of your passion and you maintain that awareness, I believe that you will connect with the people that everybody's going forward for the higher good. And I believe that that connection happens for a reason. So even though in your past you might look at like, wow, that was the most lame brain thing I ever did, there was a connection in there that might have happened for a reason.
I believe in the principle of the adjacent possible.
I've never heard it put that way.
It is a principle,
That's
the adjacent
awesome.
possible, and it is these random dots out there that somehow come together
The dots, yes.
to create something that you could never have imagined. But once it happens, you become aware of it, and then you
Exactly.
become much more aware of the adjacent possible.
Exactly. You start thinking in possibility
Yes.
instead of uncertainty. And you're
Yes.
like, wow, look at this. So in Charlotte's world, yes, what happens to her is different things start to become possible, and then she finds out the truth.
Were the 4 novels that preceded this a run-up to this one?
No,
Was Charlotte a new character for you?
she was a brand new character.
Uh-huh.
I'd actually, the first 2 books, the first book I wrote and the sequel to that were based around a boy and a girl, with the boy being more the protagonist. And then I decided I wanted to have women protagonists. I wanted to feature the journey of a woman that might not have been strong in the beginning and how she finds her way.
Where do you get the inspiration? I've visited with other authors, and they're all interesting in their own way.
All different, yes.
So what inspires you to write? Where do you get the idea, the theme, and how difficult is it for you to write? And are there certain times of the day when you're more productive?
When I first started, I did my best work between 10 in the morning and 10 at night and 4 in the morning. It was quiet, right?
Yes.
It was quiet. I could focus. As a matter of fact, I had this old laptop. It might have been one of the first laptops ever made, and it didn't have the capacity to connect to our wireless. So when I sat down on that, there was no internet, there's no email, there's no distractions, and so I would sit down in this room where I didn't do anything else in this room but write, and I would just force myself, and I just started playing around with story ideas, and And then I discovered, believe it or not, I did this meditation by Shakti Gawan on how to visualize. And I knew very specifically what I wanted, and I did this visualization. And believe it or not, it's almost like magically this creative space opened up. So then the more I sat down in that room during those times, in the quiet, I had my whole shtick there, right? Like, this is what I do. I was amazed. It was almost like my brain was like, oh, thank God, she's finally discovered this part of me. And to the point like where like 9 or 8 or 9, I'm like, wow, I wish my child would go to bed because they're there, right? The characters are there. It's time for me to start pouring down their story. And it was a wonderful space. As a matter of fact, within the next couple of years, I started really playing with the creativity and really getting attached to characters. And it was a really great space to the point where I decided there's something that happened in my life, and I decided to embrace sobriety. And I was amazed, as time passed being sober, I was amazed at how much more I could tap into, which basically led to the shtick, the menopausal baseball babe shtick that kind of was born of like this other creative outlet. And it's just like creative outlets just kept coming. They just kept flowing, characters, story. And of course, it's a lot based on, and this is what I think is important. I think it's important to get out there and connect, because you'll be in a conversation and you're like, wow, that's really an interesting perspective. And a character
And
is
do
born.
you store those things away and then draw on them later?
A little bit of both.
Interesting tidbits.
You have like little pieces of paper, little notes on my phone. So I have all this other stuff, but stick-it notes, and I'm not really organized in that respect. But yeah, it's all someplace, and then and it kind of all comes together. Like you sit down and I really respect those people that like outline their story, right? I can't do that because mine comes more like
Yours just
character.
flows. Yeah.
It's like a character will come and then the whole story kind of builds. And of course, it's a little harder when you get to the editing process, because sometimes you have to go back and kind of be like, okay, now I need to build this storyline. I love this character. How does it fit in?
Do you know where your story is going to go, where the characters are going to go?
Often I don't.
You don't. So that's discovery. That's the journey.
Yeah.
So you're on the journey yourself with your character.
Basically, yeah. It's a two-way street. So.
And there are some writers who the first draft is their, if not their last, certainly good enough, so it's pretty close. Do you labor over a draft once you've gotten the first one done?
Yeah. Like in my process, it's probably, let's say a novel is probably 10% creativity, 90% editing. But even in the editing a part of it, there's a lot of creativity going on, like reevaluating storylines, reevaluating, because I like it when things come together, like why do these characters exist? What do they have to show each other? Why would they come together? Is it believable that they're coming together, right? And I like a lot of humor. I like taking dark places and making them a little humorous, because everybody has those dark places. And even with me in the creative process, it's almost like I almost feel sometimes like the most emotional place for me to be creatively is just right on the verge of darkness and light.
Yes.
It's just right there. And so you could almost cry or laugh, but that's my spot.
You do a lot of writing.
I try to do a lot of writing.
But you have the blog.
A couple blogs, yep.
A couple blogs. One of them is dedicated to the Phillies or baseball.
Baseball,
and that's the menopausal baseball enthusiast. So you have the blogs. You write novels. Are you still in comedy, involved in comedy? And did you write your own routines?
I did write my own routines with a lot of help. But
Was that when you were in therapy?
No, you know what's funny about that is this is probably, I was 28 years old, so that was a long time ago. And what happened is I was living in Amarillo, Texas, and I was depressed. I was not in a good relationship. I didn't have a job I liked. I really didn't know myself. I went down there thinking it was going to be this totally different world than what it was. Yeah. And I was not feeling good about my life. And so, and this is probably where the crazy thing comes in. I was driving in Amarillo and I saw this sign on the strip mall that said Jolly's Comedy Club, and I'm thinking, oh my God, there's a comedy club in Amarillo? That's hilarious right there. And I went in, and they had an open mic. I found out what an open mic was. Yes. I'm like, what would that be? And they told me, and I had to come with 5 minutes. That's all I got was 5 minutes. So I went home, I wrote a little set, and got up there and stunk. They didn't really laugh. but they were very kind. They just kind of looked at me like, she's such a sweet girl, right? Like,
Respectfully.
very respectfully. Which made it even funnier because they're just so silent. Nobody's even heckling me. Like, they should have been throwing things at me. I was so bad. But I'm like, that was interesting. So I step off stage, and this one of their regular headliners, his stage name was Batman, and he was a really cool guy. And I step off, and I'm howling, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like the most morbidly embarrassing. And he's like, no, you really weren't that bad. I'm like, oh, I was that bad. But he was awesome because he kind of pulled me into their little local writers group, and he kind of taught me, you know, it has to have a setup. Like, there has to be a premise, and then you have to have the punchline. And the cool thing about comedy is you take this, like, let's say you write this whole 5-minute set, and then you just go slash stuff off that doesn't get you to the punchline as fast as possible. Yeah. So it's really cool. And in my writing, I don't use a lot of, like, there's not like large amounts of description. It's not how beautiful the room is. Like, I just get straight to the characters. Characters, dialogue, action, characters, dialogue, action. If there's some backstory you need, the characters are going to tell it to you sooner or later. But I don't elaborate on backstory. I don't elaborate on narrative. Just, I guess, because that's the way I had started writing, and I really like that concept of being very very brief.
I'm not sure you're old enough to know who Irma Bombeck was.
Oh, I do
the
know.
late
Yeah.
Irma Bombeck.
Yeah.
Wonderful humorist, wonderful
Very much
writer.
so.
Kind of Will Rogers of her time.
Very much so.
Had commentary on just about all aspects of life, but particularly motherhood, family, kids, and so on. Are you Irma Bombeck?
It's very flattering that you would say that. She, no, I'm not Irma Bombeck. Only Irma Bombeck could be her.
Yeah.
I remember, though, at one point in time, I just didn't understand myself, and I knew I was different. You know, like, when I was born, I wanted to be a cowboy, not a cowgirl, a cowboy. And then I learned very early on that physiologically that was impossible. So I'm like, well, this is really interesting because my passion really is to be a cowboy, right? So I was a very different child. And I remember seeing her book, and it said the grass is always greener over the septic tank, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, what's a septic tank? I grew up in Iowa. What's a septic tank, right? So we had an outhouse, believe it or not. Until I was 5, we had an outhouse. So the whole concept of, like, what's suburban life? So I wasn't familiar with anything that she was talking about. So she kind of brought me into, like, that whole suburban setting. But it was also so cool how she could find humor in just normal existence, just, you know, just being a mom, just being in the suburbs. And so she kind of looked at the whole thing in its ridiculousness, which I thought was genius, just sheer genius.
Yes.
Yeah, she was. Yes. There's actually a blog site, I think it's a community blog site that's based on the work of Irma Bombeck.
Is that right?
So
I didn't know that.
I think it's a lot of people sharing that type of...
She had quite a following, and I guess in her own way it became a cult, particularly for suburban mothers. Yes,
very much so.
If,
very well deserved.
The Aliquid Son, your novel, is successfully adapted for the screen, then becomes a huge success. How would that success change your life, if at all?
Oh, can you imagine the number of people you could help? I could just help an enormous number of people. I know there are a lot of talented people in this world, and the difference between somebody pursuing their dream and somebody not pursuing their dream has a lot to do with their thought process. But in either case, you always have to run into opportunity. And if I could be a vehicle of opportunity for a lot of people who are trying to get there, it would totally make my day.
Get where? To do what?
Whatever their passion is. Like with the screenplay we're working on right now, the thing that's moving along even faster than the screenplay is the soundtrack. And because what I want to do everything I do, I want to do in Philly. So I started reaching out to local musicians, and there's this really cool little music venue in Newtown Square called Burlap and Bean. And they actually have really great musicians there, and signed artists, people who have written for major soundtracks and things like that. And so my friend Bob always invites me down to, like, see these great musicians, and a number of them now are going to be on the soundtrack. I've collected, like, this extraordinary soundtrack of songs so far that we're not even done with, and just through, like, connecting with people, and my friend Jeffrey from the Philadelphia Orchestra is going to help us. It's just amazing how in your very small little community you'd be surprised about the number of resources there are for really whatever you want to do.
It sounds like you're gifted, and you're able to, well, you're gifted in many ways, I guess, but you're also able to multitask. So you're working on the script, the screenplay, and you're doing the blogs and so on. Are you able to compartmentalize and move quickly from one thing to another, or are you involved in all of it all the time? Am I making myself clear?
Yes, you are.
With a certain fluidity that some people have, be able
Totally
to move
understand.
from project to project?
I always say if I had the ability to shut out all distractions like I can now when I was in college, oh my gosh, I'd have been a Rhodes Scholar, right? But I think it comes with time, though, in practice.
Yes.
Is I can really exist within a lot of chaos, a lot of activity, and you sit down. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you sit down. If you want to write, you're just going to have to learn how to do that in whatever environment you're in at this moment, and that takes practice. And so I've practiced, and I think because it's something that I really enjoy.
Yes.
It's almost like I'm very eager to sit down, and so I'm able to shut out a lot of things because I would rather do that than anything else.
Are you working on the next novel?
Not yet, I'm not, but I do have.
Do you know what it will be?
A number. There's a number of them that it could be. A number of them that it could be.
It wouldn't be Charlotte Smith moves on to another episode?
There is another story there.
A sequel?
Yeah, there is another sequel there. Matter of fact, when my producer and I were going through the story, just trying to pare down what was going to make it into the movie and what couldn't make it in the movie, he asked me a question. There was this one turning point where her boyfriend gets hurt very badly, which is like a turning point in her life. And so he's like, wow, I thought you were really going to take that story and run with it, but instead you went this other way. I'm like, because this is the sequel. There's always a sequel. He's like, oh, I understand. So as far as the Aliquot Sum, the book is concerned, yeah, there's another book there.
Yeah.
As far as the movie's concerned, I think it's going to depend completely on how successful it is.
Well, I guess. I mean, even if it's not successful, there's try again. You
That's
pick
true.
yourself up and you try again. My God, if you make it the first time out, that would be extraordinary.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be. It'd be extraordinary.
Well, that's why we're working so hard on the script.
Then I won't be able to book you at all for an interview.
That's not true.
You'll have no time.
You were here first, man.
Of all the things you have done or doing, what is the most personally satisfying?
Wow, that's an easy one. Sobriety.
Sobriety.
By far. I have been rewarded with more things in my life as a result of simply facing the fact that that was not working for me. It was not working. Binge drinking wasn't working. Drinking in any respect was not working. And once I made that decision and never turned back, the world opened up to me. And I have a lot of people who approach me, you know, about how you did it or why you did it and stuff. And I'm not really so concerned about why I did it. I'm concerned about the magic that happened once I did it, right? And I have another friend who has been sober for 4 or 5 years, and we talk about it, and he's like, you know, I think it takes about 2 years to kind of detox from that. But he said it's really amazing how your mind starts working in a totally different capacity when it's just free of any encumbrance whatsoever. And I mean, even the relationship with my son, all I wanted was this really great relationship with my son. And one day he was about 9 or 10 years old, and we'd been hitting the bottle for a while, and he just said to me, why do you have to drink so much? And I knew at that point in time it was going to be alcohol or my son. It was not even a decision. I'm like, this is a no-brainer, completely a no-brainer, never looked back. And from there, just doors open, like mentally, creatively, in my life, doors open.
You sound like a spiritual person, and I do make the distinction between being a religious person and a spiritual person.
Totally understand.
But clearly, I think, a spiritual person.
Very much so.
And this notion of thoughts becoming things, materializing somehow, is that part of your own philosophy, or is it borrowed from some other?
Borrowed.
From what? Whom?
You name it. Like, I remember my sister gave me this tape by Carolyn Mace a long time, a cassette tape, which will age it, called Why People Don't Heal and How They Could, or something like that. And kind of introduced me to this concept of like your biography becomes your biology. And I was like, wow, you mean like, so in other words, my life and all the things that I've allowed to affect me profoundly are actually going to be carried with me in a physical respect, right? In a health respect. So it got me thinking, and then of course it led to, you know, like Wayne Dyer, Michael Beckwith, Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, oh my gosh, anybody by Hay House, like all these different authors, the Option Institute, all, and it's really it's like the same message. And even what you were talking about is the connecting the dots.
Yes.
Deepak Chopra. It's all the same message. Joe Dispenza, another one of my favorites. It's all the same message. I just think it's important to continue, because as far as I'm concerned, it's a spiritual practice that I have to maintain.
Yes.
Because if you don't maintain it, it's just like mowing your lawn. If you don't mow your lawn, it tends toward chaos. If you don't tend to your thoughts, they tend toward chaos, right? It's what's big is small is big, right? You can look out in nature and it will tell you exactly how to coexist, because they all coexist. So it was just through putting all the pieces of the puzzles together that I finally discovered that I'm like, wow, it's really truly what I'm thinking. Because if what I'm thinking is like, okay, this is my dream, right? So there's everybody has a dream.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the person who gets to live their dream and the person who doesn't get to live their dream?
Very, very often it's luck.
Opportunity, right?
Yes.
Yes. Being in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
So why would somebody...
being prepared to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So why would that happen to this person and not to that person?
Preparation.
Because this person is not only prepared
Yes.
physically, mentally,
Yes.
and they feel it so much in their heart and in their gut, like they know this is their dream, this is what's supposed to happen for them, and they embrace that.
Which is why you're so confident that this book will be a successful film? You're absolutely sure it will.
That's...
Because you believe it must.
I believe that what we're going to come up with is an amazing script.
Yes.
It's going to be an amazing script. And I believe that everybody who's supposed to be involved in this,
Yes.
we're going to connect with them. I truly believe that. I truly believe that this story is a story that people are going to connect with.
Does Bob have a figure what it's going to cost to produce it? It's going to be a low budget film?
We don't know yet, because it's so contingent on how well we tell the story.
Okay.
So that's our focus right now. And then once we have that story,
Yeah.
we know that people who believe in that story are going to come
Cindy,
forward.
you mentioned earlier at the outset that you sold your business. What was your business? You were, maybe you still are, an entrepreneur, but you had your own business at one point?
Yes, I did.
What?
I did personal bookkeeping and personal services for very affluent clients, a very small group of affluent clients.
And you built it to the point where you had an asset, you were able to sell it?
Yes, and I was actually approached by a young man who had seen the reports, because very wealthy people have a lot of players. They have their accountant,
Yes,
their investment
yes.
broker, their banker, you know, their lawyers. They have all these people, and there are people that need information based on their spending.
Yes.
But there's not a lot of people who can take that entire chaotic spending mess and put it down in such an organized form that it actually makes sense to all these people, so that they can help with estate planning and insurances and all this other stuff, right? So I had that niche, and I had like 4 or 5 clients, and I did it really well. And this young man had seen one of my reports at one time and wanted to know where those came from, directed to me, and he liked what I did. He liked what I did. And interestingly enough, he took what I did, bought my business, took what I did, and figured out how to embezzle those customers out of about $20 million. I know.
Okay, that's bad karma. That's
I'm
really
like,
bad karma.
Dude, yeah. And I was like, wow. So I mean, now in hindsight, it's obvious to all of us
Yes.
that he'd worked for a big investment brokerage house. And
Yes.
and you know what? In his defense, Ponzi schemes have been going on for years and years and years, right? He just found a way to get his hands on people's money before it was regulated by the investment house.
It's
He's in
okay.
jail. So,
Well, folks who are interested in your book can get it where?
Amazon.
Amazon? And your website is? You have a couple, I think. What is your website?
The main website is www.cindyfalteich.com.
Okay.
I'm the only Cindy Falteich in the world.
All right. You are the only one
Only
in the
one
world?
in the world,
Is
yes.
that right?
Yes.
You're absolutely sure of that?
I'm absolutely sure of that.
Okay. Well,
And I married into that name. And
we have had the
yeah.
distinct pleasure today of visiting with the only Cindy Falteich in the world.
See, you can't even say it.
Thank you. Falteich in the world. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves.